Welcome to the Claire Orton podcast. In this series, The Narc Behind the Educator, I and fellow narcissism educators discuss and share our own personal journeys with the narcissist and narcissistic abuse in our own lives.
'Cause every time you talk it sound like blah, 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 blah. I'm just hearing blah.
Hi, Richard. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you very much for having me on.
I'm really looking forward to talking to you. I'm a massive fan. I've been following your content for a while.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about your own narcissistic relationship.
Mhm.
How did you guys meet?
I saw her when I was out with a friend in a city, and I approached her
Okay.
and started talking to her and found out a little bit about her. And then I think I got her Instagram, as one does in the modern age.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was how things began.
Okay. Yeah, it's kind of creepy nowadays to ask for a phone number for a stranger. You always ask for the social media first.
Oh, it's a dreadful infraction of personal boundaries to ask for a phone number, and it's much worse to even call them on a phone. It's absolutely barbaric.
So what was going on for you when you met? What kind of state were you in?
Well, I thought that I was in a fairly good state,
Uh-huh.
but I just returned from Spain, well, from trying to live in Spain, where I had on that particular occasion of living in Spain, I had a lot of problems there, so I had to come back. And I did have family around me, I did have friends around me, but my life was not stable at that point.
Okay. Because I find that often when we get into a relationship with a narcissist, we're in a vulnerable state.
Yes, I think I was. I would say that I was, for sure.
Yeah. Although you chased her down. She didn't
I
come
did,
after you initially.
No, so I came after her, and she was surprised. She was like, "Oh, you're interested in me?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm interested in you."
Okay.
And then I think within a week, that dynamic had shifted. Within not a week, within like 2 or 3 days, she decided that she was going to sink her claws into me as much as she possibly could.
Okay. So tell me about that. Was it very intense?
The relationship was intense. It was very sexual, very quickly.
Okay.
And she was staying with me pretty much from day 2 or day 3. Like, we went on a couple of dates. We went on one date. We went on one date, and then she went to go and see a friend, and she returned to the city, and she was texting me at 3 o'clock in the morning saying, "I want to see you." And I was like, "No,
Okay.
it's 3 o'clock in the morning. Go away." And she said, "Well, the thing is, I'm actually outside your apartment."
Oh,
I laughed because I thought she was joking. So she was like, and after 5 minutes of back and forth joking, she was like, "If you don't come down and let me in, I'm going to leave." I was like, "Are you really here at 3 in the morning?" So I let her in. And then, we were together 24/7 then after that. It was very, very rapid.
Did that feel natural to you?
Well, what's natural to me is kind of odd because of
Okay.
my set point for normal is a little off due to
I get
childhood
that.
experiences.
So I guess what I'm asking is, did you have any like gut feeling that something was wrong, or did it feel fine?
It felt fun, not fine. It felt fun, but that things were wrong popped up in the first week. I didn't get like a 3-month honeymoon period that often people report. Within 4 days, like, there was things that were popping up that were really, really strange.
Okay, tell me about those. What kind of things were popping up?
Well, there was a psychotic episode. We were watching TV, and she'd had maybe a glass and a half of wine, and she made some comment about something that we were watching, and I made a comment jokingly, and she really got very, very upset, and she stood up from the couch, and she was standing over me, screaming. And it was really strange because I couldn't bring her down from that state for about 20 minutes. But during that
Oh, wow.
20-minute period, it was obvious that she'd entered an argument, the coordinates of which I didn't know. And I think she was arguing with either her ex-boyfriend or her father, or a combination of both.
Yeah, I definitely know what that's like when the narcissist starts having an argument with themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Was that scary?
you just happened to be there.
Yeah.
Well, she's a small girl, so I can't say that like it wasn't physically threatening, but
Mm.
emotionally it was disturbing.
Mm.
Sorry for laughing. At one point, she took her clothes off and she was naked
Okay.
and yelling at me. She really just had a glass and a half of wine, so it was just enough wine to disinhibit her. She wasn't drunk. And then she was shouting and yelling at me in such a fury while she was naked that at one point she tripped over backwards, and there was a small wicker basket in the corner of the room that I would use for like dirty clothes, and she
Yeah.
fell into it. She ended up sitting inside this basket whilst yelling at me, which made me laugh, which made things worse.
She didn't say the humor in that.
No,
No.
she did not. She did not. Yeah.
So how did things
But
repair
there
from
was,
that point?
sorry.
Go on. No, go on.
Well, what I was going to say actually answers your question anyway.
Hmm.
We started spending more time with each other. She was fairly verbally abusive behind a lot of sort of vulgar humor and dark
Okay.
humor. So which I quite like. I quite like dark humor, and I like vulgar humor. But then
Yeah.
behind it, there was quite a lot of verbal abuse, and aggression. And
Yeah.
we met a friend of hers who has known her for years, and he passed a comment to her that I heard the tail end of, which was, "Oh wow, you're so much nicer to him than you were to the guy she was with before. His name, the guy she was Bob. Let's call him. You're so much nicer to him than to Bob." And I pulled her up on this, and I was like, "The hell were you doing to Bob?" And she was like, "Oh no, I was really, really nasty to him. I was really verbally abusive to him." So she knew that she was verbally abusive. She knew that she was like that.
Yeah. But was this caked in between like big love bombing things, or was it?
I have to be honest with you.
Be honest.
Of 13 girls, of 13 ladies, we say girl in the north of England, even if you're talking about an adult.
Oh, okay.
So here you wouldn't say man or guy, you would say lad, and
Okay.
woman is a girl. So of these 13 women, three of them I would say were somewhere on the spectrum for personality disorder, but only one of them truly had NPD. And that sort of level of when people talk about love bombing, maybe it's a different experience for men than it is for women. I got there was sex bombing. There was a lot of sex, and I was idealized. Like she did idealize me, but it was not. So my female clients report like these big romantic gestures and being treated very well and being treated very lovingly. She didn't. None of the three girls that I was involved with, women, were bothered with that. There was no such period. No such period.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, some of my male clients definitely say there was love bombing and that they were particularly roped into being the hero or the savior to the victim stories.
Yes, all three had a victim story, and I was roped into being the savior. And the implication was, if you leave me, I'll crumble, or if you leave me, I will unalive myself.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the love bombing, I didn't see much of. Love leveraging, for sure, for sure.
Tell me about that.
I think love bombing is a term from cult psychology,
Mhm.
and a lot of trauma bonding is a term from cult psychology. I've just done a course on narcissistic cults that'll be out at the end of this month blog, and it does map. So you could say like cults are narcissism in a group,
Mhm.
whereas a narcissistic relationship is like a cult of one.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure everything translates. So love
Mhm.
bombing, I do think is a factor, but I think love leveraging is more important when it's a one-on-one situation. So the narcissist has to find what the target values, and then
Yeah.
they have to promise that as bait. So they leverage
Mm.
what you love. They leverage your unfulfilled desire for the things that you love, your hungers
Mm. Can I ask what your unfulfilled desires were that she was leveraging?
for love, love itself, romantic love,
Just love
let's say.
itself. Okay. Yeah. And it is really common that female narcissists use sex a lot more than male narcissists, isn't it?
As far as I know, because my female
Yeah.
clients then will say, towards the end of the relationship, I did a poll on this, and 80%
Hmm.
of female heterosexual clients would say, towards the end of the relationship, he withdrew sex as a form of punishment. I
Mm.
never had sex withdrawn. If anything, if the relationship looked like it was moving towards a termination, the
Hmm.
sexual contact would increase, not decrease. But then
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm one person, and so I'm not good as a sample size. And I
Mm.
think the women, the girls that I was attracted to are histrionic, and when they become anxious, they use sex to self-soothe. So me
Yeah.
leaving,
Okay.
they could sense my desire to leave. They become anxious, and then they would use sex to soothe their own anxieties.
Okay. So you think it was more to soothe their own anxiety rather than to try and just get you to stay?
It's both. I mean, if you say I'm leaving, and
Mm.
then you have sex with a person, then
Hmm.
they are in a position where they can say, oh, did you just use me for sex? Are you
Yeah.
really just going to have sex with me and then leave me? How could you
Yeah.
do that? Plus,
Yeah.
sex is a very boundary dissolving act, and it by
Mhm.
dissolving boundaries, it dissolves resolve. So if you've resolved to leave a person, and then you engage in this binding activity with them, have an orgasm with them,
Mm.
um, you know, it's a little bit of a mixed message to send to your own system.
Yeah. I definitely see how a female narcissist could use that against you because then it would be hard to leave. I know a male narcissist would definitely have sex with you, orgasm, and then get up and leave anyway.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So that's the psychopathic side of them. They're just not particularly bothered. There's not particularly a
Yeah.
connection there. When I first went into in my first relationship, where she was on the spectrum for narcissism, but really she was probably more of a borderline.
Hmm.
I went to therapy for sex addiction because I reasoned, as clients often misdiagnose themselves, I keep getting back into an abusive relationship because I crave the sex
Makes
that I'm having
sense.
with this girl and
Mm.
woman, and the therapist, my female therapist at that time, just laughed at me. She said, "There's no sex addiction here. You're being narcissistically abused." That was
Wow.
way back in 2009, and I
Yes.
didn't believe in narcissism. My background in
Really.
psychology didn't. No, we didn't talk. We thought personality disorders were just bunkum from made up from somewhere between psychiatry and psychoanalytic theory. And I
Uh-huh.
was very anti-Freud for most of my life, so I didn't
Interesting.
engage in psychoanalytic theory. Yeah,
Okay. That's interesting that she picked it back then because I find a lot of therapists even today don't know anything about personality disorders or narcissism.
She was brilliant, and she was a coach. Sorry, she was a trainer for uh, other therapists in the place where I'm from, in the Wirral, Liverpool, and Merseyside. So
Mm.
she was a cognitive behavioral therapist who trained other therapists to use cognitive behavioral therapy, and she herself was just very, very good. She was just very intuitive, and therefore the therapy was fast because
Mm.
she could tell if I was lying, masking, defending, denying. She would see it. She was very good.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, how long did it take for you to, I guess, realize that you were in trouble in this relationship? It felt quite normal early on because of childhood experiences you mentioned. Was there a point where you were like,
Uh,
okay, this is too much?
yes, there was. So I became physically and mentally sick. I couldn't sleep.
Mm.
I started to gain a lot of weight very, very quickly. I was becoming extremely emotionally dysregulated. And I didn't, at that point, go back to therapy because I was deep into this cult with her.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
saw going to therapy as a form of betrayal. Um, However, uh,
In
later
what way
on
did you,
down the line,
in what way did you see
go
it as a
ahead.
betrayal? I'm curious about that.
Um, well, once you're indoctrinated into a cult mindset, there's in groups and
Mm.
out groups.
Yeah.
So talking to outsiders is a crime. And also,
Mm.
I shared the shame of her abuse, and I felt the shame for her abuse that she couldn't feel and didn't feel.
Mm. Okay. That's interesting. Yeah. So go on.
Mm.
Tell me what you were telling before.
In the end, we shifted countries. We moved countries together about 3 times because I kept saying
Oh,
to her,
wow.
"What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you?" And she would be like, "Oh, it's because we live here." So there's 3 countries in Europe. Uh,
Mm.
we went from north to south. She's like, "I hate this country. If we leave, everything will be okay." So we switched country at my expense, and everything wasn't okay. And then we moved country again at my expense, and everything still wasn't okay. So we shifted countries, and then I think the third time that we shifted country, she was getting. I was becoming more rebellious
Okay.
because it was just harder and harder for me to deny that there was something wrong. And in that rebellion, I'd actually started talking to a couple of ex-girlfriends of mine and
Okay.
reaching out for help. And as for some reason, one day, um, there was pictures on my phone that I'd taken. We'd been on a trip, and she'd acted like a real prick. She was awful. She was verbally abusing me in front of other people.
Wow.
On a, it was like a tour. It was a road trip around nature in a country in Europe.
Okay.
Well, we did 4 countries together, not 3. Fucking hell. So in the fourth and final country, we did this road trip around nature, and she was just openly verbally abusing me in front of
Mm.
strangers.
How far in was this?
Oh, we were towards the end.
Okay.
We were in year. It was 3 years and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, stuff had happened. I just couldn't deny from myself. And so I took pictures of her that day on my phone, and I knew that there were texts on my phone from other girls that I was chatting to saying like, "I'm stuck in this thing. This is what's being said. This is what's happening. Is this
Wow.
normal? What do you think of this?" And I handed her the phone, and I
Mm.
went to look at the pictures and went to the shops. But I knew perfectly well she was going to go through my texts.
Okay.
I'm not sure why I made that decision. She went berserk, and then she sent me to therapy. She said, "You're mentally sick. Go to therapy."
Wow.
But the therapist that she sent me to, I told him everything. From her point of view, I was like, "I'm mentally sick. I know I'm mentally sick because my girlfriend tells me I'm mentally sick." And he was a very nice chap from Dublin, and he laughed. He laughed. He said, "So is the problem you?" And I was like, "Yes, it's me. I'm sick. Let's have a chat about that." So she sent me to. She was like, "You have to go. Are you going to go?" I went, "Yes, I'll go."
Yeah.
And did you tell him everything? I told him everything. Did you tell him the truth? I was like, I did tell him the truth. Will you go every week? I was like, yeah, I'll go every week. And I think 6 weeks later, I'd split up with her because of him, because of the help he gave me.
And you think she was so delusional that she just really thought there was nothing wrong with what she was doing and that you were the problem and that the therapist would see that you were the problem.
100%, 100%. And
Yeah.
the therapist, I kept on the therapist, to be honest with you, the therapist was maybe too much in my corner. Maybe.
Okay.
He heard the story and he just really didn't like the story. And he really wanted to get me out. So there was
Yeah.
I couldn't even do self-criticism in the therapy session.
Okay.
Other than
You probably needed that.
talking about, yeah, maybe he helped me a lot. He helped me a
Mm.
lot. Very, very nice chap. Um, we spent an awful lot of time laughing,
Yeah.
and I got better. I started to get better again because there now was an external influence to this cult,
Yeah.
and it was like this ray of light coming in.
Mm.
And yeah, she kept pushing me to go. Not real, as you say, so delusional. She didn't
Mm.
realize that he was curing me from the sickness that she'd given me.
Yeah.
But yeah, she really believed. I mean, to this day,
Mm.
she believes and will tell anyone that will listen that I am a fundamentally evil human being. Like not
Yeah.
just a bit weird or no evil, evil.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm pretty evil in my narcissist story as well. Did you have a good friendship group around you before you got involved with her?
Uh, no, no.
Okay.
At that age, the friends that I had all become young fathers, and they were
Okay.
struggling to, reacclimatize to that. Um, I did my relationship with my family wasn't as strong as it should have been, and so no. The answer to your question is no for various reasons.
Okay.
Like no, it's better now. Like guys my age who are like 44 and 45, they're used to being dads and their kids have grown up and they're not
Yeah.
panicking about it now.
Yeah. So you really were vulnerable to outside influence at that point, to her voice being the only voice.
I was desperate for love. I mean, I lived
Yeah.
a life of isolation that for some reason I thought was safe and okay. I
Mm.
just was on my own all the time. And then when she came along, and she's a beautiful girl. She's really, really attractive.
Mm.
Um, and she was, exactly my type, which is
Hmm.
why I approached her, which is why I pursued her was for that reason.
Hmm.
And I felt very, very lucky. Even when she was being abusive for the first 2 months of the relationship, I was like, I can't believe this is really happening. She's so beautiful. She's so amazing. So because
Mm.
beauty was I was so lonely. Being in a
Mm.
relationship was such a high drive, and beauty was such a high standard, such a high
Mm.
value for me in relationships. I was blind to everything else. Not
Mm.
blind to it, but I really wasn't looking at it properly.
Yeah. I think beauty blinds a lot of men anyway in relationships, particularly if they're already lonely. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So did you have those feelings that you'd met your soulmate, the love of your life, like any of those things that you hear? You didn't feel like that. You just thought she was so beautiful.
There's a lot of my experiences. The goal I'm telling you about would ring the bells for full clinical NPD, plus
Yeah.
histrionic, plus borderline, plus psychopathy. She was very
Yeah.
mentally sick. The other two goals are on the spectrum, and
Mhm.
it's possible to talk to them when they're in a certain cycle and have
Mhm.
them really sincerely apologize and really acknowledge.
Okay.
She couldn't. She was steely. She was just walled in. So no, there was no, I never had this feeling like this is my soulmate, this is the love of my life. None of that.
Mm.
Not. I don't think. To be honest, though, I don't think in those terms. I never think in those terms.
Okay. You say that she was more like a psychopath and she never kind of came out of her own little alternate reality. How did that show in the relationship? Like the lack of empathy or, the struggles? Like how did that kind of show up in the relationship?
Um, she was never off. She never switched off. She never relaxed. From the moment she opened her crazy eyes in the morning,
Mm.
the first thing she did was stare at me. Then she would spend all day staring at me until she eventually gave up through exhaustion at night and went to sleep. I've never felt so scrutinized in my whole life. Even when we would watch movies together, she wouldn't turn and look at the fucking TV. She'd be like, she'd have one eye on me. And I was like, please, like, my love, please just relax and focus on you and your own thoughts.
Yeah, that's giving me the heebie-jeebies just thinking about
It's very scary. So
it.
she was so tuned into everything. I couldn't
Hmm.
stretch, I couldn't sigh, I couldn't scratch my eyebrow without it being assigned some meaning. And it would be like, what's the problem? What's up?
Hmm.
What's wrong with you? Nothing's wrong with me. Why aren't you talking? Because I'm just having a moment of private reflection where I
Hmm.
consider the easiest way to jump off this planet because you're driving me fucking mad. So I'd be literally just sat there doing nothing. That was a crime. If I moved, that was a crime. If I didn't move, that was a crime. If I spoke, everything was a crime. It's partly due to where she was raised and her experience. She was raised in another country she never experienced communist dictatorship, but her parents did. And so
Okay.
I think she learned this like paranoid watchfulness,
Hmm.
looking for dissidents, looking for signs of betrayal. And my God, if I was driving and a female, a girl, a woman was jogging past, I better not look. I better not look. I better not. I better stare out the other window to make sure
Hmm.
that I didn't see because she'd go berserk, like start
Yeah.
screaming. So I was constantly on hyper alert because she'd start screaming.
Yeah.
There was I got on a plane to Portugal and I speak Portuguese. And one of the air hostesses said, hello. And I said, bom dia. And she went, oh, you speak Portuguese? I went, yeah, I used to. And then I took my seat. She didn't talk to me for 3 days. Three
Um,
fucking days. 3 days. I was like, it was just a nightmare. It was just a living hell.
was there a lot of silent treatment?
Mm, a lot of silent treatment. A lot of silent treatment. If she wasn't screaming, if she would either be interrogating,
Hmm.
berating, or silence. There was nothing else. You couldn't converse. You couldn't just have a normal dinner without it having this overtone and just like the person just looking at you like that, just gathering data. You felt like a machine just gathering
Yeah,
data, and it was
scanning you.
exhausting. Yeah, it was exhausting. But on the other side of it, I kind of feel like maybe she was very into romantic movies, usually the ones that feature Ryan Gosling,
Mhm.
and I think she thought that that's what love was.
Yeah.
That's because she would say stuff that she thought was romantic. And I was like, that's not
Mhm.
romantic. It's creepy. She was like, I want to breathe the air out of your lungs.
Okay.
And I was like,
Yeah.
that sounds gross, unhygienic,
Mhm.
and like it could lead to my suffocation and death. That's not hot. But that's what she was like. She wanted to be in. She didn't want to be with me. She wanted to be in me. She wanted to wear me like a skin.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, they don't have those feelings, love and care and these kind of positive feelings. And I find that a lot of them do watch those movies and they get the lines and the words and they repeat them because they're acting.
Mm, mm.
Did you feel like that's what she was doing?
I did, and some of the
Or
stuff.
did
I
she
mean,
really
to
just
be
want to
honest,
breathe your air out
I
of your
think she really wanted
lungs?
to breathe my hair.
I got really close to the
She,
mic
I
just
think,
then.
yes. In some ways, I could feel from her it was sincere. It's like she misunderstood
Really?
what what care and love was. There's a Ryan Gosling movie where a guy builds a house for a woman when she's married to somebody else,
The
and
Notebook.
is like, "I built this. Yeah, I built this house for you. Now live in it." And I remember what she was like. I love this film. It's amazing. And I watched it, and I was like, speaking as a psychologist, I'm not sure that
Yeah,
he's
it's so
respecting
toxic.
her boundaries. It's really weird. And then he's like,
Exactly.
live in my house. What do you want? I built you a house. Well, she loved that. She was like, that's
Yeah,
love. That's love.
yeah.
I was like, I think if everybody lived that way, the world would fall apart. I don't see that as being loving. I see that as stalkerish. But she loved that. She thought that was
Oh, the
amazing.
movie is incredibly emotionally abusive all the way through. It's
Is it?
terrible.
I should go
Oh,
back and
it's
rewatch.
terrible.
I should
You
rewatch.
should.
Yeah.
You should, and you should do a breakdown of it because it's horrific. In the beginning of the movie, he's asking her to go on a date and she's refusing and refusing and
Mm,
refusing, and then they get on this Ferris wheel and he gets up in
mm.
front of her on the Ferris wheel and hangs down and he's like, I'm gonna jump if you don't agree to go out with me. And she's like, no, I don't want to. And he's
Block
like, I'm
that.
gonna jump. And she's like, okay, I'll go out with you. And it's like, oh, that's so romantic. It's like, guys, is this the standard we should be looking at?
Isn't it weird when we put stuff in fantasy? Everybody's like, "Wow, this is really hot."
Yeah.
But if it was done in reality, people would get locked up for it. There was one. It
Mhm.
was called. It was like this erotic film on Netflix that created a stir a couple of years ago. And the girl
Mhm.
I was seeing wanted me to watch it, and I was like, "I hate watching sex on like the noise when people go and
Oh, the
when
sounds. Yeah.
when
Yeah.
actors are pretending to make out, it makes me gag. So I was like, okay, I'll watch this. It's called 365 Days or something. But anyway, the story is there's a pretty Italian man who sees a pretty Polish girl and he really
Oh,
likes her and he's really rich. So he fucking kidnaps her and then proceeds to have sex with other women in front of her while she's tied up.
how
And this
romantic.
girl's like, this is and
Richard.
she was like, this is so hot. It's so hot. It's so romantic. I'm like, I'm pretty sure these are crimes I'm watching. This is just a series of crimes by
What
a
message is she
clear
trying to
narcissistic
convey?
psychopath. I was confused. I was like, this is not. But it's funny, like you put it on a movie, you put it in a book,
Hmm.
and it's passion, and it means the man
Hmm.
really likes you. And I'm
Hmm.
like, I don't want to be liked like that. I don't know why you
Yeah.
want to be liked like that. That
Hmm.
that's scary stuff. That's the stuff that leads
Hmm.
that really in the real world would lead to kidnappings and violence. It's not good. This is but you put it in a movie, Ryan Gosling's a good looking guy. You're like, oh, I would love to have Ryan Gosling threaten to kill himself if I don't go to Starbucks with him.
Exactly. And I think
Creepy.
society doesn't help us, especially in terms of helping people to recognize narcissists, psychopaths, and predators, because we have all of this behavior idealized, all of this love bombing, like Pretty Woman. Pretty
Oh my
Woman, the
God.
massive love bombing in Pretty Woman. And then the massive power difference as well. It's so unhealthy.
I was just thinking about Pretty Woman yesterday
Hmm.
because not this girl, but another girl told me that was her favorite movie. And I was like, it's an I don't want to sound like a preachy progressive lefty because I'm really not that way inclined. But now let me do that. That's an older man with loads of money, and she's young and is broke. And I'm like, is this love? Like he grew,
Yeah,
she's broke, has no education and no class, and he takes her as a thing.
yeah,
And he's not like, okay, so you've never had an opportunity. You're 20, I'm 50, and I'm a millionaire.
yeah.
I'm going to get you educated. You're going to go to
Right.
university now, and you're going to have your own business, and you're going to have your own
Hmm.
education, your own money. And when you have that, if you want to come and hang out with a dude who's 30 years older or whatever, 20 years older than you, that's
Hmm.
your choice. But right now, she didn't have a choice. That's not a choice.
Exactly.
Like, that's survival. Like it's
Exactly.
it's eating $2 cheeseburgers and giving blowjobs to truckers or
Yeah,
going in a five-star hotel. That's
yeah,
not a choice. Sorry,
exactly.
like it's
And here,
it to me. I'm
I
just
know we're
like,
digressing,
how have
but
we normalized that? Yeah,
Yeah. And he offers
go
her
on, go on.
$3,000 for the week, and she's never seen this much money in her life. And it's just, yeah, the power, yeah, everything you're saying. Exactly.
It's weird, and it's weird though that when you sit there in the cinema, I'm not one of those person. Like enjoy your movies, like whatever, it's fine, enjoy the movie, but you sit there in the cinema and you go, this is love. The message of the movie is he
Mhm.
really loves her. I'm
Mhm.
like, is that what you would do if you really cared about somebody? And then through what I just said, you wouldn't be able to escape the dynamic becoming a bit perverse, because if he sent her
Mhm.
to university and helped set her up in a business and she becomes her own adult independent person, he's basically just turned into her father. And you can't like yeah, anyway. So yeah, I don't know. It's a weird thing to have. A lot of these romantic stories, they're like, oh, this is so romantic, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm not sure that it is. Twilight,
Mhm.
that's for young adults, like late teens and early 20s. That's a creepy story. The
Mhm.
Hunger Games, the power dynamic between the young girl who has to choose between the bad boy and the reliable life, that's a creepy dynamic.
Mhm.
So yeah, anyway. There's a lot of
Yeah,
things I think we get wrong culturally that could lead people astray.
100%. 100%. I mean, I have clients that are like, oh, after one date, he sent me 500 roses the next day. It was so romantic. It's like, no, you went on one date. That's creepy. That's not
Yeah,
romantic. That's creepy.
I think we need a little analysis collectively as a species on what that word romantic actually
Yeah.
means, and what its implications are, and what is the hunger that we have for romance, and to be able to say something like, is it a similar hunger to, because it's always excess, and it's a symbolic gesture of excess. And to
Mhm.
me, I would always posit the position that, well, that's in a lot of ways, that's essentially pornography. That's what pornography, it's excess, and
And
it's for its own sake. No, 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 roses has nothing to do with pornography. I'm like, but you don't understand the principle. It's a gesture
Mhm.
of excess, which
Mhm.
is not emotionally, it's not coming from a position of emotional stability, boundaries, respecting your individual nature. It's just it's just excess to me. All of that is it, and any form of excess now kind of gives me the creeps.
I get that. I think dysfunction sells as well. People don't want to look at healthy, happy relationships.
A true statement, but a miserable one. Dysfunction sells. Yes, it
Dysfunction
does. Yes, it
sells.
does. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So back to your relationship. Did you guys ever break up and
Yes,
get
yes,
back together?
yes, yes. Oh, how many times? 25, 30 times.
Okay.
So she was always very bossy, bullying, and persecutory until Richard got his balls out of the fridge where she put them, strapped them back on, and said, listen, I can't deal with this. I have to leave. And then she would become a desperate child and would literally beg on her knees on the floor,
Oh wow, yeah.
sob uncontrollably, stutter. Her face would change color and shape. Her lips would go white. And she's like, please, 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 I'm so sorry. I know I'm doing all of this. I know I am, and I can't stop. I'll go to therapy. I'll go to therapy. She saw a therapist 0 times, whereas I
Mhm.
saw three, like over
Yeah,
30 times,
yeah.
because there was nothing wrong with her. Yeah, at least in 3.5 years, I tried to leave 25 or 30 times. I
Was
did
it always
leave
you leaving?
once.
Did
Oh
she ever
God,
threaten
yeah,
to
she
leave?
would never.
She never threatened to leave?
Hmm. Ah, okay. So imagine this. You have 3 years of me saying your behavior is disgusting and
Mhm.
I'm going to leave. And I'd even gone so far as to recording her in her rages, and I'd play it back and be like, does that sound like love to you? Can you hear the sentences you're using? Can you hear the words you're calling me? And do you know why you did this? You did this because when I brought your dog back in from an hour-long walk in the rain for your dog's benefit because you don't walk him. He was wet and he left some water on the living room floor. And you screamed for me, at me. It would be, her screaming sessions go on for 2 hours. The longest one she ever did, I swear by God, was 6 hours nonstop. I drove to different locations in Dublin while she screamed at me because I couldn't take her back to the apartment because there was other human beings there and it would have been humiliating. So I'd take her to different parks. I'd be like, okay, people are now noticing that this girl is having a shit fit. They're going to call the police. I drove to a different park. So 6 hours she was doing. So it's 2 years of me trying to leave and just not having the backbone to do it. And then in the end, in the last 3 months, once she'd sent me to therapy, I can't see myself, but I think what was happening was I would come back from therapy and instead of getting upset or sad or angry when she berated me, I was totally calm and totally accepting of what she was doing. And that sent her insane. There were days where she would, the therapy then became the new argument. What did you say in therapy? I'm like, I don't have to tell you that. You sent me to therapy to resolve my issues. I'm resolving it with my therapist. No, but I want to know what you talked about. Why? Come to couples therapy then if you want to know what's being said. I'm not telling you that. I don't have to tell you that. My therapist says I don't have to. And so she got fucking nuts. And one day, after one of these sort of arguments, and I said to her, like, you're screaming, there's kids in the flat opposite. You need to calm down. I'm going to bed. Went to bed at 12, fell asleep, slept for 3 hours, and was awoken at 3 o'clock in the morning by her in the dark, standing over me, screaming, and her spit was hitting my face. And she was screaming at me in a way that let me know that she'd been having an argument with me in her head in the living room. Yeah. And then at some point in the living room, she's like, I'm going to involve the real guy. Yeah. So she's screaming at me. So I said, okay. I was asleep. This was my life, like just constant attack. And I said, look, go to the living room. I'm going to come to you and we'll have a conversation. And I'll remember this for the rest of my life. I don't wear formal shirts. For some reason, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go and have this argument with this girl who'd lost her mind. And I remember putting on a shirt. I put on like a formal shirt and my hands shaking to do the buttons of the shirt. And so I went in and I sat with her and she said, I want kids and you have to give me kids.
Okay.
And I was like, okay. What's happening? She said, well, you know, at the time she was 31. She was like, I'm 31. This is the healthiest time I've got. I want 2 kids and you have to marry me. And if you don't act like a fucking man and marry me within the next 6 months, I will leave you. And I was like, why wait 6 months? The answer is no, you can leave me now. Because I never had a problem with her leaving me. So she tried threatening me in the final phase. I'm going to leave you. And I'll be like, there's the door. I've been desperate to get out of this situation for years. And the only reason I didn't is because I think, and your parents think, and have told me that you're a high suicide risk. So the only reason I'm still here is because I'm terrified. She'd like looked up information on, and she was a scientist. So without giving any details at all, she had found a way that there is that I wasn't aware of, where you can very effectively commit suicide. No one can resuscitate you. Nobody brings you back. And it's painless. And you can find the equipment to do this online. And her parents had caught her looking at the site. Wow. So I was like, if you leave, you ain't killing yourself. Great. Let's do that. So there was this, she screamed at me. She's like, you have to give me kids. You have to get me married. You have to marry me. And I said, well, this is romantic, which sent her off screaming even more. Yeah, but no, she never, well, she threatened to leave 3 or 4 times, but my answer was just like, go, like, please, let's see you off. It only ended when she finally caved to couples therapy, and we found a guy in Dublin who's actually a very famous couples therapist, who's a South African. And we did one session, and he gave her feedback that she did not like. And he contacted me privately, and he never said, she's sick, but he,
Okay.
experienced this.
It's okay.
Have tissues on hand, kids. He said, he basically called me and said, listen, you know what you have to do. You know what you have to do. And you know what you have to do for yourself. And then I moved because it was very kind.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to make that effort. And so I said, do you want me to come in? Do you want to I'll do a session with you. And he said, no, we can just have this phone call. And
Yeah.
he gave me some advice. He gave me some encouragement. And he basically said, what you're afraid of her doing, she's never, ever going to do. She's never going to do that. She's used that as a form of, he didn't use these words. It basically implied it was a form of manipulation and terrorism against their parents and against me. And that when they found the evidence, it was because she wanted them to find that evidence and she wanted me to know about it. So he very, very kindly reached out to me privately and then advised me in how, step by step, how to break up with her and the words to say. And that's how I got out. She came home one day and I sat her down and I just said, look, this is what's happening. And just said, you have to leave. You have to leave. This is over. And this is over permanently. I never want to hear from you again.
Oh.
I'm very grateful to the South African chap and to the Irish chap. They helped me a lot.
Yeah. That's amazing. So, did you feel that you were trauma bonded?
Oh no, I was trauma bonded. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's definitely trauma bonded. It did untold damage to me psychologically and emotionally. It took years to recover from.
Yeah. So tell me a bit about that. Once it ended, how did you experience that trauma bond? What did it feel like?
Um, well, there was pre-existing wounds from childhood that I'd not gone to therapy for and not had any help with. And I tried to deal with on my own. And then all of that started coming to the surface. So pre-existing traumatic conditions started coming to the surface. I became very anxious and very depressed for a while, a bit lost, and I should have stayed in therapy, and I didn't. I don't know what my reasoning was. I don't know what superego injunction was at work there, but I really would have benefited from just staying in therapy, and I didn't. I left the country. I went back home, and yeah, the next 18 months were very, very, very difficult, very painful.
Did she let you go? Or did she try to pull you back?
Oh, God.
I can't imagine her just being like, oh, okay, that's all right. Good luck to you, Richard.
So
Yeah.
she lived where I'm from for a while, and she met some of my friends. And what do you call them in Australia? Bogans.
Bogans.
So we Bogans. So in New Zealand, it's Westies. In Australia, it's Bogans. Here,
Yeah.
where I'm from, we would say Scallies.
Okay.
So some of my friends, I went to private school, so I have like posh friends. But then I
Hmm.
worked in nightclub security and gyms for years, so I have friends who are not so posh. And they're not Scallies, but they know Scallies. We were
Okay.
Bogans, so they're not Bogans, but they know Bogans. So me and
Bogans.
this girl, when we were, eh?
Bogans. It's not bogans, it's bogans.
Bogans,
Bogans. Yeah.
Bogans,
Bogans. Sorry, go
they're Bogans. so so they me and this girl, we would see the interaction with different people and my friends, and I said to her, there's a couple of my mates, and they've gotten with girls who are a bit scally, nice looking girls, but a bit scally. And when they break up with the guy, if they're upset with them, one of the things they'll do is they'll go and find another man straight away and have a baby with him. And she was like, "Wow, that's awful." And I said, "Yeah, could you imagine being a child that was the product of a gesture of revenge?" And she
on.
said, "No, that's terrible. What a low class thing to do." I said, "Yeah." So that happened. There was 4 cases of it in my extended friend group, and we spoke about it a number of times. She was like, "That's a terrible thing to do." Well, she got with another guy within a month, and she was pregnant with him within 8 weeks.
Wow.
And she made sure that mutual friends of ours,
Quite a bad
because I
one.
blocked her everywhere. Yeah,
Okay.
she made sure that it got back to me. So that was her revenge. But no, she never reached out to me. And she never would. She's very there is narcissism there. There is a full blown NPD, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of psychopathy, and her
Mm.
mindset and her culture is a very extreme one. And so if you are out, you're dead. You're just dead to me. Apart from me letting you know that I got pregnant with another man 8 weeks after I walked out the door.
Did that hurt?
No, she
It didn't
she she
hurt.
made so many mistakes for me. No, she made so many mistakes for me. When she wanted to hurt me, she would often get it right. Like being persecuted all the time was hurtful. But when she made an effort to be like, I'm going to do something hurtful, she was usually judging it from what would hurt her. And for somebody to go and get pregnant or even get married, no, that doesn't hurt me. I'm like, you're a mother now. God bless. Like, that's great. You created life. That's bigger than any petty power play that we had in our relationship. Happy for you. And probably if you have any chance at salvation, it's through your baby and through, she didn't get married, but hopefully she married him eventually. It's through your husband. So good. That's that. No, it doesn't. I'm not like, oh no, that should have been my baby.
No, not
I
like
don't.
that.
I don't. I don't feel that way.
Amazing life we would have had. Yeah,
Huh?
the amazing life we would have had.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sort of, well, the only thing I would say is I feel for him. I feel for him because I know what
Oh
he
God,
must be
yeah.
going through.
Mm, yeah. So did
But yeah,
you
if
feel
you if you transgress the baby boundary for me, we're now into like I flip into a whole other level of consciousness. I'm like, okay, you created life. That's fine.
okay? Very philosophical. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a
Start teaching
person
my
there. There's like
clients.
there's a that's a human. Like that's a person. Okay,
Yeah,
so what
yeah.
can I say? I can't even. I'm talking about who she was. I ain't talking about your mother. She wasn't when she had you. She was changed in some way. Even if she's
Mhm.
still sick, nobody can be unchanged by having a child.
Or do you think that having the child could have honestly positively changed someone like that?
No, it didn't affect my mother at all. Why would it affect anybody else? I just like to think this.
That's enough.
I do think
To
that
anyone
there's
listening,
latent narcissism.
don't have a child with them, that won't change them. That's not the
I do
answer.
I do think there's a latent narcissism in all of us
Okay.
that does seem to get ironed out when to a degree in in fairly healthy people by having children. You change, you mature. I've seen my friends, family members go through it because of the sheer weight of responsibility. How could it not? It impacts you, but it doesn't necessarily make you a better person. That's false.
Yeah. Random
Plenty of shitty
question.
parents out there. Yeah, go ahead.
Did she love the dog? Did she treat the dog well?
So she works in an area of science that's related to animals, and her whole public facing persona is that she's little Miss Hippie, loves the environment, loves animals, loves nature, so on and so
Mm.
forth. In 3.5 years, and I lived with her every day without me prompting her, she walked her own fucking 32-kilogram golden retriever twice on her own. And she walked in for 25 minutes on lead and said, "That's enough." And that drove me insane. I'm a dog person. I'm a dog
Mm.
lover. That is a big dog. It's bred
Mm.
for hunting. He needs 2 hours a day and he needs
Mm.
it off lead. And he's got to go and talk to other dogs and he's got to go and sniff a bunch of nasty stuff and he's got to
Mhm.
play and he's got to hunt. And then he would come home. When I dealt with him, when I walked him, he would sit in the corner, he'd watch me work, he'd look at me and he'd go and do this big sigh. And I'd be like, I just did my job as a dog owner. This is done. When she walked in, he was going crazy in the house. He'd
Yeah.
be like playing with you, biting your feet, and just being a dick because he was full of energy.
Mm.
So no, and she didn't, but she would everything to do with appearance, like keeping him looking good, yes, but actually giving him what he needed, she had no interest whatsoever. She
Yeah.
transported him inhumanely in ways that I did not like, but I couldn't say anything
Mm.
because he wasn't my dog. She had I won't go off, but like there are dog transporting services that'll take dogs across Europe. And on the marketing, they're like, your dog will be on a velvet pillow inside of a
Um,
beautiful caravan, stroked every 5 minutes. These fuckers, they stick them in cages.
yeah.
And then so when he came to me after she organized his transport, that I said I'll drive to Southern Europe and pick him up. No, that's ridiculous. He's just an animal. He's fine. He doesn't know what's
Mhm.
happening. We're going to do it this way. He was traumatized, and I knew
Yeah.
that he'd been left on metal because if his is a retriever, and retrievers are weird with when their claws touch
Mm.
metal. Like if you try and take
Yeah.
him on an elevator, they're like, "Ah!" I knew he'd been left on metal because he was shaking. And when I gave him water, and he drank 3 full bowls of water. He'd
Wow.
not been watered. He'd not been walked. He'd been left in the back of a steel van for the entire 24, and then they just driven nonstop for 24 hours to get back.
Hmm.
I was so sad. I was so sad
Yeah.
for him.
Yeah.
No, she didn't. She didn't fucking love him. She couldn't. She didn't care about him beyond posting pictures of him on Facebook and Instagram, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Because
Sorry,
I hear a lot of
I
people
get
say,
into a
but
rant on that.
that's okay. No, I hear a lot of people say, but they love their dog. And I think that a lot of the time they have a dog for appearances. They don't love anything.
My arse, as we would say in Merseyside, my fucking arse. No, they don't. They love
Yeah.
themselves, and
Huh?
they're very smart. They know. But by the way, she didn't rescue him. She bought him from a breeder, and I'm like, oh, you love animals and conservation
Hmm.
and the environment, and you bought him from a fucking puppy farm. Get out of here. And she did it with her narcissistic ex, and the pair of these fucking idiots. They got two perfect looking white golden retrievers
Yeah.
together so they could post that shit on social media. No,
Yeah.
she didn't love her dog. She loved the way the dog made her look.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's what I thought you were going to say.
I need therapy for this. A
Well,
lot
you
of
know, I
repressed
coach Richard.
rage.
I can send you some of my packages.
Yeah, do that. Do that. Give me the angry about the way my ex treated her dog package.
So it took you a year and a half to recover.
I mean, yes, like I'm in
functionally?
therapy now. Yeah, functionally, I'm in therapy
Mm,
now because I'm still recovering from things that happened to me in childhood that then manifested into adult repetition compulsion. So let's say functionally a year and a half. Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Did you have withdrawal symptoms? Did you feel ever like this desperate need to return? What was the recovery process like with the trauma bond?
Ah, now I was trauma bonded to her when I was in a relationship.
Oh,
Um, and I have had with massive withdrawal symptoms and a desire to see someone again in a different abusive relationship. And that lasted for about a year, where I felt like I was a junkie craving supply. But with her, she really like, I'm thinking the image in my mind is of an old vinyl record. And if you just scratch it too many times, it just doesn't play.
yeah.
It just didn't. It just didn't play. I was devastated for in my emotions. But did I want to see her? No, no. She went way too far. She went
Mhm.
way, way, way too far. Like I was saying that to her during the relationship. I'm like, you're too extreme. This is just not. You're saying stuff and doing stuff that no relationship would be able to recover from. This is insane. So no, no, I didn't. But in a different abusive relationship, yes, I did for about 12 months.
Mhm. Do you feel sexually addicted to her though?
Do I now?
No. Did you? Do you still feel
um,
sexually addicted to her, Richard?
I'd rather shag the dog. You could cut that. No, no.
There was
Uh,
none of that left.
there was the sex stuff. It was such a shame for her because I was maybe oversharing. Well, there's the so uh, sexually, she was very sexually incontinent, but very sexually dishonest. So she wanted
Okay.
sex all the time. And if I did this on her arm, she would be in a frenzy. Like
Mhm.
I'm exaggerating, but it took very, very little for her to become because she was obsessed
Mhm.
in a sick way. But she wasn't honest, and she wouldn't be honest with me. She wouldn't tell me what she liked. So the
Okay.
game Battleships, where you try and
Mhm.
figure out, but you can't see. You just go, gotcha, gotcha. So in 3 years, in the last 3 months, I'd actually unlocked her and I'd figured her out. So
Okay.
it was unfortunate. It was unfortunate because she was having a great time especially in the last month, because I'd
Yeah.
really clicked. I was like, aha. And I used to ask her, I'd be like, are you into this? And she'd go, no, no, I'm not into it, but you like it. So I do it
Really?
for you. And I like that. And I'm like, no,
Wow.
you no, you like this. No, 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 I don't. But she also claimed she'd never masturbated in her life. She'd never watched porn. She never had sexual fantasies. And I was like, come
Yeah.
on, dude, for God's sake. So yeah, the sexual addiction to her, no. But to the other girl that I said I struggled for 12 months, yes, because that's partly me. Like if I am focused on one person
Mm.
and my romantic physical life is built around that person. My fantasy life is also built around that person. So yeah, I can get a little stuck.
Yeah, I understand. Okay.
It's okay. I've learned to be a psychopathic, promiscuous, indifferent.
You've learnt to be like that.
Be asked. I'd rather just read a book.
It gets to that
Couldn't be asked.
point.
I'm too old. I can't be bothered.
How did you come to start educating publicly?
Um, uh, probably it's from childhood. So I was parentified a little bit. So I was encouraged. I wasn't seen unless I was performing. So my childhood was a lot of theatre. I was
Mhm.
even involved in sales meetings for adults, which everybody thought was extremely cute and extremely clever.
Mm,
on behalf of my father, who would take me on sales because he had a higher conversion rate if I was there chatting to them as well.
wow.
I think that started when I was like 10 or something.
Mhm.
So then when I was it just sort of after that it just came naturally to me. At university, I was teaching self-defense for free.
Mm,
And we had like a class, we had to end up with a class of like 15 people that were regularly meeting. Um, and I was teaching psychology, I was teaching NLP. And then I've never really stopped. But at the moment of actually getting properly into teaching people publicly was when I left
mm,
the security industry at age 27. A friend of mine got me to try speaking in a school, delivering like a motivational seminar.
mhm.
And I liked it and I started doing it regularly. And then I got very good at it. And within 2 years of delivering these motivational talks to troubled teenagers, I was actually a keynote speaker at the National Education Conference, which was wild. Do you know the guy who created mind maps? He's called Tony Bazan. I
Uh,
was on the speaker list behind him, which was wild to me because I was like, I'm a nightclub bouncer and a taxi driver. How's this happened? But that was when I did 5 years in the British education system, so there was a lot of public speaking to very hostile crowds. So I got used to sort of teaching publicly there.
so you kind of
Teenagers
segued
are
from
hostile.
there into educating about narcissistic abuse.
Well, at the same time in the timeline, if we move back, I think it was 2001, I decided I wanted a piece of the online space, but I couldn't even send an email. So I started
Mm,
studying internet marketing. So I did, I think it was 2004 or 2005, I released my first online product and I was selling it on eBay. It was ebooks, martial arts based ebooks, self defense ebooks. Then I made a DVD and that morphed by the time I was 30. That became my full-time job, was just teaching self-defense online and selling online
mm,
products. We went from like a side hustle to actually making good money. That went right the way through until 2012. YouTube deleted the account, the self-defense account. They said it was too violent. When I
oh,
protested, I pointed out to them that they had scenes from movies like Saw and
mm,
Hostel and Korean movies that featured people being tortured. Um, and they didn't take it down. But my self defense stuff that was to teach people how to deal with violent predators was too violent. So they just deleted it.
did you have a lot of
I,
followers?
I did by the standards of 2012 in the self
Yeah,
defense sphere. I
yeah.
had 50,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but Um, self-defense channels now will have millions, but in
Mm,
2012 it was a lot, and there was
yeah,
only 20, maybe 15 or 20 of us online doing it. Um, and it was the marketing arm of a business that YouTube just chopped off. They just were like, well, we're just not doing
yeah,
this anymore, and that's
devastating.
that. So at that time, I'd already overlapping with this period. The instructors that I was talking to, it was a global brand. It done really well because I was blending psychology with the physical stuff.
Mm,
And there was like legitimate agencies and special forces units that wanted to talk to me. I was talking regularly to the lead instructor of the air marshals based in Las Vegas. This was proper self-defense brand had grown. But a
yeah,
lot of the instructors, ex-soldiers, security guys, police, were contacting me personally saying, oh, your course is really good. You're in psychology, right? I'd be like, yeah, yeah, yeah. He said, oh, I have problems with my wife. I have problems with my kids. But I would say to them, see a therapist, and they wouldn't go. So these men did not want to go to therapy and talk about their feelings. They're like, no, I just need some advice and guidance from you. So I created the brand that grew out of Street Fight Secrets. The sort of the therapy arm of Street Fight Secrets was called Spartan Life Coach. And it was to say it's not therapy, it's life coaching. It's called Spartan because the 300 was big and men like the Spartans.
mm,
That's where the project actually, that's its roots. Its roots are in self-defense.
yeah. That's a really interesting journey into it.
Mm.
So, what advice would you give right now to someone who is struggling to get out of one of these relationships?
need a nice South African man from Dublin to give you a phone call. I think probably the most realistic advice is to say don't try to do it on your own. Try to speak to a coach or a therapist who understands narcissistic abuse. Have someone in your corner, so that you don't just have the narcissist's voice in your head. You have your coach or your therapist voice in your head,
Yeah,
supporting you and
important.
encouraging you and helping you. That's probably the most realistic way of starting to get the courage and the strength together to terminate the relationship and leave.
Richard, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I've really enjoyed chatting with you.
I've enjoyed it too. Thank you very much for having me on.
Yeah, everyone knows who you are, but what are your social media handles? Where can people find your content?
If they look for Richard Grannon on Instagram, I'm
Yeah.
active in that chaotic, depraved, decadent hellhole of narcissism that is Instagram. And
Yeah.
I'm all over YouTube. If you put Richard Grannon's YouTube, I have like 5 channels on YouTube tackling
Okay.
different topics there.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me on.